So after all these elaborate preparations with a chair and a stender, first of all, people are very worried to see me walking around with a crutch. Baruch Hashem, I'm fine. Everything is okay. I hope next time I'll come to Lakewood, I will leave this stick elsewhere. One of the great Gedolim in Hungary was the HaRav, Rav Mordechai Winkler, Shalosh Teshuvos Levushay Mordechai. And besides being one of the outstanding Gedolim of his, I'm supposed to speak in English or in Yiddish? What is the SHIUR? English or Yiddish? English? So he's one of the greatest Gedolim, Gedol Ador, and it was a tremendous honor. Leis Ziknusoi, the Kehele brought him a stecken, a cane with a silver handle, like a lot of Rebbes and Choshev Rabbonim have. After a week or so, he comes to shul, he cut off the top of the handle, and he's walking with the cane like this. And they were terribly dismayed, and they asked him, Rabbeinu, why did you cut off the handle? He says it was too high. So they said, you cut off from the bottom. He said, by the bottom it fit perfectly. On the top it was too high. So this is for me a bit too high, a bit too low, but we get around. Siyata d'shmaya. Kadosh Baruch Hu should refuah for us all, and I hope we'll shortly be able to discard this stick. When I visit the community, it's a special simcha for me to be Marbitz Torah, because I don't think a day goes by that we don't have the schus to be Marbitz Torah, Baruch Hashem, Berachamei Shemayim B'siyata d'shmaya, and especially speaking in our koilel. Now, it doesn't seem to me that everybody present in this room are Chavrei HaKoilel, but I know that this is a koilel, and one of the choshevs the koilelim, and being a choshev a koilel in Lakewood is not a poshet achievement, but I know this is one of the choshev a koilelim. And the spirit and the soul, the neshama yaser of a yishuv, are its yeshivas and its koilelim. Megillat of Chavav, there's a machlokes, both the knesias, both the midrashos, which have kedusha yaseira. And as a kufnum given a shulchan aruch Rechaim, the halacha is a beis medrash has more kedusha than a beis knesses. And the nafka min is lagabe malam b'kodesh v'lo imoriden. However, in Brochas Daf Ches, the Gemara says, Oyev Hashem Sharei Tzion Mekol Mishkanos Yankov. Oyev Hashem She'orah Mitzion Ba'alocha Mebot HaKnesis Mebot HaMedrash. So obviously, there is something which has even more kedusha than a beis medrash and a beis knesses gam yachad, and those are She'orim Mitzionim Ba'alocha. Amelei Torah that learn Lasuk Shmait Saliba de Hulchasa, that is the greatest kedusha in this world. So it's a schus for me to have the opportunity to speak halacha to Talmidei Chachamim. So it was publicized, it was brought to my attention that I'm supposed to speak about Gineyvas, Daas, and Einoah. Gineyvas, Daas, and Einoah are essentially two different sugyas, but we will do our best. But I also always feel importance when I come, and it's not a koilel or a yeshiva which I give shiurim on a steady basis. I have a one-time opportunity to speak Torah to an oilam, and especially when I see many yungalai, the b'nei Torah, I want to leave them with something substantial, and not only speak about a gevusa sugya, one specific sugya, but to teach yesodis that will be useful in many sugyas that you will learn, and I will be mishtadel today to do the same. The sugya of Gineyvas Daas is on Chulin Daf Tzadik Daled Amud Aleph, and the Gemara says, "Osa lignoiv das habrius." If you invite someone over for a meal and you know that he is not coming, you're not allowed to invite him and give the impression that you would like to have him when you don't really want to have him. So you cannot invite him based on the knowledge that he's not going to come. And the Gemara gives various different examples. you make an impression that you open the barrel of wine for him when actually you're opening for yourself. Those are examples of Gineyvas Daas. Are we dealing with an Issa D'Oraisa or an Issa D'Rabbanon? And what is the essence of the Issa? The Ritva on the spot says, Loi Tignoivu, that includes Gineyvas Daas, and it's clear on the Ritva that we're dealing with an Issa D'Oraisa. Smag, Mitzvah Kuf Nun Hei, Lo Ta'asa, on the love of Geneva, Sefer Yereim Kuv Chov Daled, both the Smag and the Yereim were Balei HaTosfos, Rav Moshe Mekutzi and Rabbi Eliezer Memetz, and we find the same, the Mabed Kiryat Sefer al Rambam, Perek Yud Ches, Mehilchas Mechira. Some Rishonim and great poskim clearly say we're dealing with an Issa D'Rabbanon, because twice in Toras Moshe we have Lo Signoivu, Lo Signoiv, and the Gemara Darshans, Goynev Poshas and Goynev Mamoin. So Gineyvas Daas is an Issa D'Rabbanan, Kach Mavur B'Smak. Third Sefer HaMitzvos from Balei HaTosfos, the Ri Mekurvel, Smak Reish Samech Bayis. That is the opinion of the Bach, Siman Reish Chov Ches, because the halachas of Gineyvas Daas are in Choshe Mishpat, Siman Reish Chov Ches, Shulchan Aruch HaRav, Hilchos Einua, Gineyvas Daas, they maintain we're dealing with an Issa D'Rabbanan. What is the nature of the Isur? The Rishonim that say it's in Torah clearly say, Lo Tignoivu. It is a gather of Geneva. In Rambam, it is clear that there are Shnei Dinim B'Gineyvas Daas, because the Rambam brings the Isur of Gineyvas Daas in two different sources. Hilchos Deis, Perek Beis, and Hilchos Mechira, Perek Yud Ches, Halacha Aleph and Beis. And the examples that Rambam gives in these two different sources are the different examples. In Hilchos Deis, about inviting a friend when you know that he's not coming and you have no intention of serving a meal, you just want to make a good impression. That's in Hilchos Deis. In Hilchos Mechira, Perek Yud Ches, the Rambam writes other halachas of Gineyvas Daas, even though in the Gemara they're brought together. You're not allowed to soak meat in water just to make the meat seem fresher and bigger and heavier. And that is Gineyvas Daas, which has a kesher with Oinoah. Shulchan Aruch HaRav brings this of Gineyvas Daas and Hilchos Geneva v'Oinoah. So the Rambam brings Hilchos Gineyvas Daas and Dina Mechira, and in Hilchos Deis. And as we know, Hilchos Deis is not halacha psuka, but Hilchos Deis essentially is Midos Tovos. Most of Hilchos Deis is based on Masechet Avos and other Mamorah Chazal, which are in Toras HaMidos and not in halacha psuka. The Rambam does not bring Gineyvas Daas and Hilchos Geneva. So obviously, according to the Rambam, Shnei Dinim B'Gineyvas Daas. One is essentially Lehisrachek Min HaSheker, and that is in Hilchos Deis. And the other is a din in Mekach u'Memkar, closely associated with Hilchos Oinoah. And Oinoah is not exactly the same as Hilchos Gezela. So the Rambam doesn't bring Gineyvas Daas and Hilchos Geneva, but both in Hilchos Deis and in Hilchos Mechira. The Rambam in Hilchos Avodah Zorah, Hilchos Avodas Kerchovim, not in Mishnah Torah, but rather in Sefer HaMitzvos, Lo Ta'asa Lamed Beis. And the Rambam brings what we learn in Sanhedrin of Samach Zayin. Ki Hilchos Shabbos, kach Hilchos Avodah Zorah. And just like in Hilchos Shabbos, yes, Chayev Chatos, Poter Avalosor, Muter Lachatchila, the Gemara in Sanhedrin says there are three different categories in Acheles Ma'oinen u'Mechashev. HaMechashev, Chayev Misa, Achizas Einayim is Poter Avalosor, Sefer Yetzira is Muter Lachatchila. And the Rambam in Lo Ta'aseh Lamed Beis, when the Rambam brings the Isser of Achizas Einayim, the Rambam writes, it's Gineyvas Daas. Does the Rambam mean to say that the Isser of Achizas Einayim in Kishuv is Mishum Isser Gineyvas Daas? If so, it cannot have any kesher with Hilchos Geneva or Hilchos Oinoah, because in Hilchos Kishuv, just making an impression, just appearing to do magic. So how would that be Gzela or Oinoah? So we would need to assume that Rambam Nishito said that there is another din in Gineyvas Das, which is Poshet Sheker, L'srachek min sheker. It's the category of Gineyvas Das that we find in Hilchos Deos. But la mitoy shel dover, the Rambam in Lotas Salamet Beis doesn't have any shaykhs with Gineyvas Das. And this is just an example that you cannot just learn words. You need to understand what is behind the words and the essence and the mahus of the halacha. Achizas einayim loika. It's an issa dioraisa. Einer chayev misa, but it's a dioraisa. Hagoynev das abrius ein boy malchus. Achizas einayim is a din in hilches kishuf. The Rambam merely means to explain what is achizas einayim. Uma bein achizas einayim lekishuf gomur shechayev misa. Kishuf, he actually does things in reality. Things change. Achizas einayim is only achizas einayim. It is only Gineyvas Das. He influences the person's senses, but the isser of achizas einayim is not mishum Gineyvas Das. It is mehilchas ma'oinen u'mechashev. And when the Rambam associates the din of oiches einayim to Gineyvas Das, in no way does he mean to say that the isser of achizas einayim is mishum Gineyvas Das. He just explains what is achizas einayim. Doing tricks is not an issur d'oraisa. Doing tricks is nothing. That is mutar lechatchila. Achizas einayim, he really influences a person's senses, and the person thinks that he sees supernatural or strange phenomena. So the Rambam does in no way mean to say that the isser of achizas einayim is mishum Gineyvas Das, but rather to define what is achizas einayim. In Gittin Daf Samach Beis Amud Aleph, the Gemara deals with Darkei Sholem, and there are several Mishnayos. That is the Ikar source in Torah Shebal Peh, and the Dinam of Darkei Sholem, Kama Mishnayos. And in Gittin Daf Samach Beis, the Gemara tells that Gedolei HaMeroim used to say hello. They used to greet even Goyim, like Rabbi Yochanan and Rav Kahana. And the Gemara says in Gittin that Rav Kahana used to tell a Goy, Shalom Lamar, Shalom Lamar. Rashi says, he said to the Goy Shalom Lamar, but in his heart he had in mind his Rebbe in Beis HaMedrash. So he just said the words in the presence of a Goy, but actually what he bared in mind was Shalom Yia Lamoiroi V'Rabbi, Rabbi Shalim Doi Torah. And Tosfos disagrees with Rashi, and Tosfos says that's Gineyvas Das. That would be an isser of Gineyvas Das. Kim Dumani Rashi Lishitosoi. Chulin Tzadik Daled. When the Gemara speaks about Gineyvas Das, lo bedarkei hamekach v'hamemkar. But Gineyvas Das, you cannot invite a person to your home when you have no intention of giving him a meal because you know that he's rushing, he's on his way home, and he won't come. Rashi says, Goynev Das Chaveiroi, so Rashi clearly says the isser of Gineyvas Das is only when you want to derive benefit out of cheating a person or making an impression, a false impression. Rashi writes the isser of Gineyvas Das is not Gineyvas Momoin, but it is also not L'srachek min sheker. The isser of Gineyvas Das is why is he doing this? He wants to derive benefit. And that is the isser of Gineyvas Das. Rashi Lishitosoi. When Rav Kahana told the guy, Shalom Amar, he wanted to be nice, he wanted to be Mekadosh Shem Shemayim, he wanted to Shei Shem Shemayim Messiah Val Yodai. He had no intention of deriving any benefit, and therefore there would be no isser of Gineyvas Das. V'neresh Rashi Lishitosoi. Tosfos maintains Gineyvas Das is lav dafka kishu mischaven shechziku leitoiva. It still is Gineyvas Das, which is essentially a sheker, and that is the way Tosfos understands Gineyvas Das, and therefore Tosfos disagrees with Perush Rashi in Gittin Samach Beis. Hagoes Maloi Haroyim. The Maloi Haroyim was one of the greatest gedolim in the days of the Chassam Sofer. He was a Chosid, and the Maloi Haroyim has a Gevaldige Sefer. I am very dismayed that there are so many swarm from Gedolei Yisrael. She'iru pnei tevel b'tirosam. but no average Ben Torah today. You go to one kollel to the other in Lakewood, I think very, very few of Reichem, needless to say, Yeshiva Bochum ever heard of the Malay HaRav. But he was one of the greatest Gedolim going back 200 years. And in Azagos al Shas, which are printed in Shas Vilna of Samach Beis, he brings the Zohar. The Zohar Kodesh said, Yankov did exactly the same many years before Rav Kahana. And when he was Mishtachav Ela Esav, he had in mind, L'shtachav Esav Kodesh Baruch Hu, L'melech Malchei Amlochim. But he pretended and made an impression on Esav Shemishtachav Eloi, and the Malay HaRav wants to prove Rashi's shitta from the Zohar, which is interesting, but I think we cannot prove from Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu had a good reason, L'shtachav Esav. He was afraid, Shiakohu. It was a pikuach nefesh situation, and even if it would be an Isra of Gineyvas Daas, pikuach nefesh doiche kol haTorah kulo. In the Rav Kahana had no reason. His life wasn't threatened, his life wasn't in jeopardy, and therefore the Zohar wouldn't prove Shittas Rashi. Legufon shel dvorim, ibe d'Italia. I think Shat Rashi is totally different. Rav Kahana wanted to be nice to the guy, and he really intended to wish him a good day, have a great day. And that was his pure intention. That's not Gineyvas Das. What troubles Rashi is using the word shalom. Shalom is Shemoi Shel HaKodesh Baruch Hu. So when you bench a guy, you could say, have a great day, have a happy day. What troubles Rashi is Shalom Elamar. La'aski Hashem Shemayim, and Shalom is Hashem of HaKodesh Baruch Hu. It's not Man Hashem Hashem and Menchokim. It's not a Isser of Maski Hashem Shemayim Levatola. But Rashi feels that you don't say Shalom to a guy. So when he used the word Shalom, he was Machaven L'moirei v'Rabbi. But that's not Gineyvas Das. Because when he greeted that guy, he greeted him just to be decent and to be nice, and therefore in no way would it be Gineyvas Das. That would be my Pshat Rashi, Lefi Pshutom Shel Devorim. An interessante Tshuva, Tshuvas Mahari Broina. Mahari Broina was one of Gedolei Ashkenaz, Soift Kufas HaRishonim, Tshuvas Mahari Broina, Simen Kuf Yud Gimel. Mahari Broina brings, some people greet a guy, assuming that the guy doesn't understand Lashon Kodesh, and they say, Shalom Al Yisrael. Is that legitimate? The guy thinks you're benching him, and you're saying Shalom Al Yisrael, and you assume that the guy doesn't understand what you're saying. There are some Hasidim, when they greet a guy, and they say, Gayen Dered, Choba Misa Meshine, and you know, I don't think that's a Mida Toiva. I know of at least one Mikra. The guy said, oh, I understand Yiddish. I worked in a yeshiva for 25 years, and I very well understood what you told me. So you need to be a mensch in every way. And, you know, you need to be a mensch. Don't say hello, don't say goodbye, but don't give any klolis. And the Marie Broiner says that is a Isser. He's not cursing the guy. He didn't say anything nasty. But if you say Shalom Al Yisrael, don't pretend that you're giving him a bracha. And the Marie Broiner differentiates between Rav Kahana, even according to Shittas Rashi, he said Shalom Elamar. You in your heart have in mind your Rebbe, that's okay. But you gave him a bracha. You gave him a proper bracha. You said Shalom Elamar, that's okay. But if you say Shalom Al Yisrael and you're not giving him a bracha at all, that's an issue of Gineyvas Das. And the Gemara Chunan is mavor, and in Shulchan Aruch, Gineyvas Das is even ben Yisrael Agoy. So Marie Broiner says that is not legitimate. You cannot say Shalom Al Yisrael and pretend that you're giving him a bracha, because that's not a bracha for him. And Marie Broiner says that is different than Shittas Rashi. Many times people ask me Halacha L'Maisa, and I don't think this is Gineyvas Das at all. We have a family member, a Zayda, a Baba, and a person has a baby, and his mother or father or a Zayda want, he should give a name, after one of his forefathers, and the person wasn't from. But he was a very nice man. Sometimes he supported his children, Bali Tshuva. And I am asked, should I give this name or not? You know, I want to be Machabed my father. I want to be Machabed my mother. is the right thing to do. But I don't want to give a name on a person that was a Machal Shabbos, that wasn't from. So what is the significance of giving names? You know, it's not a Chazal, it's not everywhere in the Rishonim, but there are some Gedolei Hasidus that say it's important when you give a name, it should be on the name of a tzaddik. The Gemara does say you cannot give a name after a Rosh because Shem Shom Yirkav. So we're not dealing with the Shom, and my eitzah is always, yes, make your father, make your mother happy, give that name, but you could have in mind, after thousands of years of Gedolei Yisrael, there is no name in which you can't find someone that was a tzaddik gomer. It might be the Oves HaGdoshim or throughout the ages. So yes, you're giving the name to make your father or mother or Baba or Zayda to make them happy. In your heart, you have in mind to give a name after a tzaddik, or whoever it may be. And that is not Gineyvas Daas. Because the reason you're giving this name at the end of the day is because your Zayda had that name. So that's not Gineyvas Daas. The fact that you have in mind Ba'ofen Zguli, because Lizgulas Atinoik, or the girl, the baby girl, the baby boy, and you have in mind one of the Gedolei Yisrael, there's nothing wrong with that. That is a lechatchila, and it's not Gineyvas Daas. It is in a way similar to Shittas Rashi, the way I explained it. Rav Kahana wanted to make that guy happy, and that is legitimate. He bared in mind when he used Shalom, le Moire V'Rabbi. That is not Gineyvas Daas, and that is the eitzah I give almost on a daily basis, because this happens all the time, especially in a door like our generation. There are so many Balei Tshuva, and so many from young, dedicated Bnei Torah, whose forefathers might not have been from, and their parents do expect them to be mechaved their forefathers. And sometimes those non-from people were supportive, even financially, and you want to acknowledge them and you want to make them happy. There is nothing wrong, and that is not Gineyvas Daas, as I explained. Yesayra Mezu. Kosovo Bach B'Simareish Chavches. Even though we deal with the other concept of Gineyvas Daas in transactions, Gineyvas Daas B'Dina Momenes. The Bach says, Gineyvas Daas, when you're inviting a person to your home or similar situations, also lahaflig. But if that is darkei hanimus, if that is what people usually do, then that is legitimate, even though you don't mean it. And there are two ways to explain the Bach. What is the heter of Gineyvas Daas, even though you are going to Das, but it is Darko Shaloilom. What is the heter of Darko Shaloilom? What is the heter of Darkei Animus? One approach, one pshat would be, well, when a person is a mata es atzmoi, we don't have to correct him. That is the Sif Mefurish in Shulchan Aruch, based on the Gemara in Masechet Chulin. If I said something and it wasn't my intention, and he for some reason feels that I said that I offered him something, I do not have to correct that. So maybe sensible person knows what is the Darkei Shaloilom, and he knows that when I say, you know, do you want to come over to my house? I don't necessarily mean to have him over to my house, but that is just Darkei Animus. And therefore, that is not, he shouldn't have assumed that I really want him in my house. That would be one explanation. The other explanation would be, Kvoida Brias. If this is what people, nice people usually say, then it is legitimate, even though it might be Gineyvas Daas. Especially if Gineyvas Daas is not in the Uraisa, then it depends on the circumstances, and sometimes it is legitimate. Kosav Asma, Siv Kot Neches Reish Chavches. Why is it legitimate? Because if I won't ask him whether he wants to come over to my house, maybe he'll be offended, maybe he'll be hurt, and therefore that is the heter of Darkei Hanimus, of Darkei Shel Olam. But the Sma explains another din in Shulchan Aruch, Sif Tes, and that is more problematic. And this brings us to the Gineyvas Daas of Mekach u'Memkar. So you cannot take a piece of meat which is not fresh, soak it in water to make it look more appealing. And the Bach says, if that is derech hasoichlem, it's mutar. How would we understand this halacha? This is Gineyvas Daas that has monetary significance. You want him to buy a piece of meat it's not fresh, and you want him to buy it because he thinks it's fresh. What would be the heter of derech hasoichlem? Many achronim disagree with this halacha. Divrei Malkiel was one of the greatest poskim in Lita. The Rav of Lamsha, Rav Malkiel Tenenbaum, Divrei Malkiel, Chelik Dalet Simen, Chelik Gimel Simen Nun Dalet, Shulchan Aruch HaRav, and this halacha writes, Shoyme Nafshor Yirchak Mimeno. So even though the Bach says and the Sma explains that it's mutar, of Shoyme Nafshor Yirchak Mimeno. So once again, if that is derech hasoichem, then the buyer, the purchaser, should also be aware that that is derech hasoichem. And therefore, he needs to take into account when you see a fresh piece of meat, not necessarily, not always would it be a fresh piece of meat, and therefore that would not be Gineyvas Daas, it would be considered as if mata es atzmoy. And this brings me to a Sefer Hasidim, which always troubled me, always bothered me. Sefer Hasidim, Sif Tov Chavav. Sefer Hasidim writes, if a person asks you for a loan and you don't want to give him a loan because he's not trustworthy, he doesn't have an amonos, you gave him a loan in the past and he didn't pay, you're not allowed to say ainly. That's Gineyvas Daas. You need to say, I don't want to give you. And to me, that's a pella. Why hurt a person's feelings? Why not say ainly? This halacha goes beyond Gineyvas Daas. The Gemara in Yevamah says, "Mutar l'shanois mipnei devar hasholom." It's permissible to lie mipnei devar hasholom, to bring peace to the world. And the Gemara proves it from a Kodesh Baruch Hu, Bavram v'Sora. Sora said, "Adoni zoken." Kodesh Baruch Hu relates to Avram and Yizokanti. So the Gemara says, "Mutar l'shanois mipnei devar hasholom." Says the Sefer Hasidim, it is only lisha'avar, not behoiva, not la'osid. So when Pliny said kach, and you say different, that is mutar l'shanois, because that is on the over. It's on the past. But to say I don't have money in the present, that's a lie, and that is not b'chal mutar l'shanois medar shom. That's the Sefer Hasidim. Sefer Hasidim is not a Sefer LaHalacha. Kol kuloi soid, kol kuloi chasidus. So maybe in a certain mile in chasidus, that's a pagam, even though Chazal say mutar l'shanois. But the Magen Avraham quotes the Sefer Hasidim, Siman Kuf Nun Vav. So I don't know whether everybody is familiar with the Magen Avraham, Siman Kuf Nun Vav. Kuf Nun Vav is, the Magen Avraham has a big compilation of many Mamorah Chazal that are not halacha psuka, and they are nowhere brought in Shulchan Aruch. And many other Mamorah Chazal that the Magen Avraham brings together in Siman Kuf Nun Vav, and the Magen Avraham quotes this Sefer Hasidim. Is this halacha psuka? Why not say I don't have? Why hurt a person? What's the inyan? Why say, I have the money, but I don't want to lend you? And why just not? That's not Gineyvas Daas. He put you in this situation. I either could be malben ponim and hurt his feelings, or say something that isn't true. Sefer Hasidim says, you cannot say ainly. The Magen Avraham doesn't actually quote the Sefer Hasidim regarding a person asking a loan. The Magen Avraham merely quotes the Yesod of the Sefer Hasidim. There's a difference between Lisha'avar and Mekan el-Habo. Ibedi d'Italia. My understanding, my interpretation of the Magen Avraham would be that the difference is, am I promising something and I don't intend to keep my promise? That's an Isser. Or am I merely stating a fact that isn't true, and that is muta lachatchilo mepnei dvar hasholim. Ben kach uben kach, tshuvas marsham. Chelik daled, siman kuf nun beis, paskins halocha lamaisa. It is preferable to say, I don't have money, than saying any other reason why you don't want to lend them. V'kach nera lanias daiti halocha lamaisa. Many times they had a strange situation, which is an interesting shaila in Gineyvas Daas. I came to a chasana. I was invited by one party. I wasn't even aware who the other mechutin is. When I come to the chasana, I know the other one very well. And the mechutin, which I wasn't aware of, is so happy to see me and so moved that I came to his chasana. Am I supposed to let him down and say, I'm sorry, I didn't come to you. I didn't know you're the mechutin. It would be even worse if I did know he's the mechutin and I came looking for the other one. So is this Gineyvas Daas? Do I need to tell him, no, I didn't come to you? Or a very similar situation, I gave a shiur somewhere, and it was right next door to a simcha. I wouldn't leave my house to come to the simcha. But I was there anyway. I gave a shiur, right, neighboring the simcha. So I come into the simcha, and the mechunim are so happy that I made the effort to come to the simcha. Do I need to tell them? Wasn't that much of an effort. I was here anyway. I was next there. To me, it's a milsa de pshita. Why hurt people? If people are happy, why let them down? Let them be happy. If they think I came to the simcha, what's wrong with that? Lanias daiti, shnei dvorim. First of all, Rashi. Rashi says the Islam of Gineyvas Daas is when you want to derive benefit. Sheploini yachzik loy toivo. And I had no intention at all. Anybody should be machzik toivo, but if I made people happy, why take away their simcha? Why disappoint them and say, I didn't come l'kvoidcho, I came l'kvoidai, I was there anyway. People are happy, let them be happy. It's a big schus to make people happy. I always taught my children, since they were little children, before you go to sleep every night, you need to ask yourself, did I bring a smile on someone's face today? Did I make someone happy today? The answer is yes, you deserve a good night's sleep. If the answer is no, try to be better tomorrow. So if you made people happy, you don't have to take away their simcha and let them down and say, no, I was here anyway. That's not Gineyvas Daas. Even though Toysis is choylek al Rashi, by the story of Rav Kahana and Gittin Samach Beis, and Toysis says it's Gineyvas Daas, even though I do not have intention sheproini yachzik le'toivo, nera ledayik. And this is a meduyik in Rambam Hilchas Deis, Shulchan Aruch Reish Chof Ches Sivav. The issue of Gineyvas Daas is only kishe mischaven lignoiv datoi. So even if you don't have any intention to derive benefit, but if you do something or say something and you want to make an impression which is not true, that is an issue of Gineyvas Daas. But if I did nothing, I didn't go out of my way, I didn't do anything, lahatois velignoiv daas abrias, it is just a result. Then that is no cheshashis of Gineyvas Daas, and there is no reason to take away a person's simcha. So we spoke about Gineyvas Daas and many details in Gineyvas Daas, and now I want to slightly change the subject, and I want to share with you a Yesod Gadol in Choshe Mishpat, in Dina Momenes, and in the entire realm of Beinodam L'Chaveiroi. And this is a Yesod Gadol which demands a lot of his abundance. So as we all know, mitzvahs are Torah. Many mitzvahs are Beinodam L'Chaveiroi and others are Beinodam L'Mokoim. The Ramban in Parshas Yisroi, famous Ramban says, Moshe Rabbeinu gets from HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shnei Luchos Abris, Aseres Adibros. The Ramban explains why Shnei Luchos and why not Aseres Adibros Aluach Echad. Why do we need Shnei Luchos? The Ramban says the first Luach is Beinodam L'Mokoim, second Luach is Beinodam L'Chaveiroi. And both Luchos, Chazal say, it's primarily in Yerushalmi Masechet Shkolim or Shovim. Same texture, same size, same weight. Shovim ki echod. The Ramban explains, First luach is ben odom lamokoim. Second ben odom lachaveiroi. The dibro hachamishis is kabet zavich v'samechu, and that is a combination. The last dibra, aluach echod, takes us from ben odom lamokoim to ben odom lachaveiroi. There is a fundamental difference between the entire system ben odom lamokoim and ben odom lachaveiroi. Ben odom lamokoim ein chochma ve'ein tvuna ve'ein eitzen neged Hashem. We're dealing with the gzeres hakosuf, and there is a very clear system. What is the halacha when two mitzvahs are soisar, contradict one another? Asay doicha loy ta'aseh, ein asay doicha loy sesa ve'eseh. Machlokes Gineyvas, another place whether one asay is doicha shnei lavim. But there's a very clear system. Bein odam lechaveiroi is geboit of tzvei yesoides. The first yesoid is hamusar v'hatzedek, and the other yesoid is hatoeles, chesed v'hatov. Those are the two yesoides. Those are the two yardsticks. And all the averos sheben odam lechaveiroi are based on Siyas HaTzedek. What you do is wrong, it has a bad result. And therefore, we find in many sources, mutar lavor al lav diuraisa, ben odam lechaveiroi, when your intentions are pure and when the result is a positive one. Sisu hayoshev hatoiv, kosav Ramban. Sisu hayoshev hatoiv is the equivalent, the parallel to kedoshim tihiyu, devorim amukim metoires Rabbeinu Ramban. The Ramban explains, kedoshim tihiyu is a general mitzvah, because it is impossible to go into every detail that might come up in the course of the human experience. So the Torah gives us many mitzvahs, and a person could still be a novel b'rshus HaTorah. That is Hagdorah of the Ramban. So there's one general mitzvah that dictates the entire realm of Ben Odom Lamokom. Kedoshim tihiyu. Kol drochecho yu b'kedusha v'b'tahara. And the equivalent in Ben Odom Lechaveiroi is vosiso hayoshev ha'atoiv. There are many mitzvahs to say and mitzvahs lotas, ben odam lechaveiroi, but there are always 1,000 different things that might come up, which are not addressed by the mitzvahs. This is a general mitzvah. V'osisu hayosher v'atoiv. Ulani is daiti. Hayosher and hatoiv, two concepts. Yosher is darke hayosher v'hamusar. Toiv is do good to people. And those are the two yesoides of Ben Odom Lechaveiroi. Whenever I say Hagdorah Mufshetes, we can never really grasp and understand until we give examples. So let's go directly to the sugyas. What I say now is a big kuntris I wrote, but it was never printed in my svorim. Yerotzen, I hope it will be. So I want to give 5 sugyas b'mercha v'yashas b'dinei Gineyvas v'gezeila. Kedushin samach teso mit beis is du a gemara Rab Shamloi. Told the mamzer, if you would come to me, I would give you an eitzah how you could purify your zera and see to it that you will have grandchildren that will be ksherim lovoi b'kohol. What's the eitzah? Go steal and see to it that you don't have money to pay, and the Bezdin will sell you as an Eved Ivri. That is the din v'nimka b'Gineyvas. An Eved Ivri is mutar b'shifcho knanis. The children will be avodim knanim, and then the Odoin will be meshachrer, and they're not mamzerim. Because an Eved Knani or a Goy cannot be a mamzer. And the Rishonim deal with the question, but what would be the heter to steal? How could a person steal? It's a lav diuraisa. Could he give him an eitzah to steal? Rashi, Tosfos Arash grapple with this question. Tosfos read and the Rashba. It's more mafurish in Toises Rid, but it's also in the Rashba. His intentions were pure. He had no rotzain. He had no will to take moment Shiena Shaloi. The moment Beis sells him, he repays. He repaid that Geneva. So he didn't do an avla. He didn't do an avla. He took money temporarily. But his intentions were clear. L'tayr zaroi. L'tayr mamzerim is not a mitzvah say. It's not doiche anything. It's not a gather of dechuyo. It must be a gather of hutro. Because l'tayr mamzerim is not a mitzvah say. But it is something that's right. He didn't mean to ba'avel anyone. Or it's a technicality. And his kavanah was pure, l'tayr zaroi, and therefore mutar lignoiv. It's not a gather of dechil. First of all, I want to give you a side. Esed says it doesn't apply to avera shebenodam lachaveiroi. It is never mutter to steal to be mekayim a mitzvah say. Mitzvah say einoi doicha lav shebenodam lachaveiroi. That's a klal godel. So this cannot be based on dechil. It is based on the aside I explained before. My intention is not to do an avla. A goynev al manas l'shalom is a ganev, and that's an issa diuraisa. But the reason I'm stealing is l'tayr zarei. That is the purest of intentions. And at the end of the day, I'm not doing an avla because he's getting his money back. That is not a issa. Now, whenever I'm a chadash yisod, I can't impose my yisod on everyone. Toises Arosh and Rashi and Toises did not have this opinion, but this is based on the Rashba and Toises Rid. Source number 2. Chazal speak about the tzidkas of Eov. Eov was a great tzaddik. He stole zdois yesoimim and sowed and plowed and was mashbiach the sodois to be mefanes yesoimim. But the lashon of the Gemara is that is theft. That is Gineyvas. He stole sodois miyasoimim, which means he took possession of sodois shalacherim. And the Yesoimim objected. They objected. He came into their fields and his noya came in a gabalim. And Chazal exalted the tzidkus of Eov. So what is the heter? Because he has none intention of taking away. His intentions are pure. Lehefech, he wants to give. He wanted to give the Yesoimim. Now, but the Gemara HaRav says, he also has pure intentions, but the difference is that's a godel. That's not a yosem, it's not a cotton. You cannot be from on Yenem's cheshbon. He's a godel. You want to be a tzaddik, give him a donation, give him tzedakah. You don't need to steal al manas l'shalom teshlum kefil. You could pay teshlum kefil without stealing. But in the case of Eov, he had no other option. He didn't have enough money to be mefanes Yesoimim, so he took possession of their fields, which is an isser of Gineyvas, al manat la'ashbiach. And that's tzidkis, that is not an aveira. Number 3 is a strange story that we find in Shabbos Kuf Mem Ches Omad Aleph. Story is about Rabbi Babachona that comes to a town. And Rabbi Yehuda teaches Torah, and he hears that Rabbi Babachona came to town. He wants him to come to the yeshiva to give a shiur, and he declines. I didn't decline. Happy to be here. But Rabbi Yehuda couldn't bring Rabbi Babachona to the Beis HaMedrash to give a shiur. He sends Abedailah, snatch his hat off his head, and run away to the Beis HaMedrash. That's what Abedailah does. Rabbi Babachona geht him in the gas. Abedailah says hello, grabs his hat, and runs away. And Rabbi Babachona chases Abedailah. And Abedailah brings him to Rabbi Yehuda's Beis HaMedrash. Rabbi Babachona comes in. And Rabbi Yehuda asks him, could we return a shever on Shabbos if a person's bone is dislodged? And Rabbi Babachona teaches Torah. Says Rabbi Yehuda, wasn't I smart when I sent Abedailah to bring him to the Beis HaMedrash to grab his hat? What was the heter to steal his hat? That's Gineyvas. And that's Kinyan Gineyva, Gineyva with a Kinyan, because Agbo is koine b'shus harabim, unlike Meshicha. And by a hat, it's Agbo, it's not Meshicha, it's Kinyan Yad. So what's the heter to steal? He stole Rabbi Babachona's hat. Rabbi Yehuda had no intention of taking that hat to himself. He wanted to bring him to the Beis HaMedrash. And that's the right thing to do, to bring a Godel B'Torah to the Beis HaMedrash to teach Torah. We all want to learn his Piskei Halacha. And he got his hat back. Took 5 minutes, came to the Beis HaMedrash, he got his hat back. But technically that's Gneva. It's not Gneva, it's Gzela. It's Vayigzel Esachanis, Mamish. So this proves once again, yes, technically it's Gzela, but there were no bad intentions and there was a positive result. It brought good, and that is not an Issur of Gneva. Number 4 is another story told in Tanas Chof HaRav Amid Beis. And these are Gemorahs Mefaroshes. Abaya wants to prove the tzidkus of Abba Umna. Tanas of Chof HaRav, the Gemara tells stories of Abba Umna, who was a Uman, who was a doctor, and he was a big, big tzaddik. And Abaya wants to show us Talmidim what a tzaddik Abba Umna is. So he tells us Talmidim, make believe that you're looking for a place to sleep over, that you don't have where to sleep, and he'll host you in his house, steal a tachshit. So they slept over in his house, and they stole a chain or a ring, a tachshit from Abba Umna's wife. They walked away with it. And then they come to Abba Umna, and they say, could you evaluate how much this gem is worth, this tachshit? They show him the tachshit they stole from his home for evaluation. And Abba Umna looks at the tachshit and he says, this is worth $10,000. And then they ask him, Abba Umna, do you recognize this tachshit? He says, of course I do. It's my wife's chain. I bought it for her a few years ago. And they ask him, so how come you didn't call the police? You didn't slap us in the face? This is your wife's tachshit. So Abba Umna says, I was aware you stole it, but I assumed probably it's Pidyon Shvuyim. Probably it's a Pekuach Nefesh. Probably need the money, so I didn't object. You know, if it's for Pidyon Shvuyim, take it. They stole a tachshit from Abba Umna's house. What's the heter to steal? Abaya, with his shikol Daas, decided to show the tzidkas of Abba Umna. We didn't mean to take anything away. Took a half hour. He got it back. Nothing happened. Is this so important? To Abaya, it was important. I don't know why. I wasn't there. But to Abaya, it was important to show the tzidkas of a tzaddik and to what madregas one could rise and one could achieve. It's not a push at the Nesayan. When people steal your tachshit and they have the chutzpah to ask you to evaluate it. But this is another example. Technically, it's Gneva Gemura. They stole a tachshit from his house. V'yafal piken mutar. I have many more rayas, but I think we'll stop here. I think these 4 are choshev enough. And I want to go over to Dinei Choy V'Lamazik. After we gave examples of Gneva V'Gzela. Mesechet Tomid Chov Zayin Amid Beis, we learn about Shomer HaMikdosh. Begimel Makoymes HaKoyanim Mishamrim, Chov Alaf Makoymes HaLaviyim Mishamrim. And the Gemara describes Ish Har Habayis was a supervisor because the Shomer HaMikdosh were Ktanim. And it was his tafkid, his duty, to make the rounds all night and see that nobody falls asleep. V'reshus hoyoloi lisroi fes ksusoi. So Gemara says, the supervisor, Ish harabayis, if he saw one of those kids fall asleep, maka be'etzba. Doesn't help, choyftoi b'makel. Doesn't help, he had a torch. Reshus hoyoloi lisroi fes ksusoi. So, you know, in yeshivas today, it's a big problem how to wake up the Bukham in the morning. So in most yeshivas, they don't even try. You know, who's going to start with the Yeshiva Gedolah Bukham? Today, Yeshiva Gdolei Bucher is a king. Doesn't have to take any tests. Doesn't have to be Shoyim Dorim. He learns whatever he wants. It's a pera b'yainai. The moment he goes into kollel, he becomes the eved. In the kollel, you need pchines, you need to learn, you need to be Shoyim Dorim. It's beyond me why a Bucher is a king and an Evrich is an Eved. Bucher has no Shmias Dorim, no Bechines, you do whatever you want. So I would not suggest adapting this methodology to wake up Bucher in the morning, Choftoi B'makel, Soiref Es Ksusoi. I would prefer Mi B'mayim, Mi B'eish. Probably every Bucher has an Gineyvas next to his bed. So you could pour water on him instead of using fire. Fire is dangerous. So anyway, so the Gemara says in Masechet Tamid, Frag the Rosh Kasha Bal Tashchis. And I wonder, why is the Kasha Bal Tashchis and why doesn't the Rosh ask, Mazik, Gzeila, you're burning his garment. Why is the Kasha Bal Tashchis and not Gzeila? Why not Choyvel? Lo Yosef la koisoi, chavtoi b'makel, soiref es ksusoi. My answer is a very pusheter. There is no gzela b'chiyai gavna. There is no choyvel b'chiyai gavna. We don't mean bad. We don't want to take anything away. We need to see Shomerei HaMikdash should fulfill their duty. And that's why the Rosh is only troubled by Baltashchis. Another opportunity, we'll talk about the teretz of the Rosh, which is a gewaldige chiddush, but it's not norgeya in your name. Mal ben pnei chaveroi berabe, mein lo chelek yolam abo. Mutav lo elodem shiyapal asatz malakiv shenoish, v'al yal pnei chaveroi berabe. Afar piken, ksubis memtes umet beis. The Gemara deals is a person mechuyev lefarm is bona v'benoisav aktanim. And the Gemara says, no, we don't find the chiyuv that a person needs to support and provide for his children. However, it's the right thing to do. Why would you expect others to spend money to support your children? They're your children. Take care of them. And the Gemara says if a person doesn't want to support his children, we turn over a chavis b'reshus harabim, and one of the Maroim, the name escaped me, got up on the chavis, and he was machres b'reshus harabim. Even a crow cares for his children. A raven, the ploini, doesn't care for his children. He's not mechuyev. And that's malbim pnei chaveroi berabim. We do it in a shus harabim to embarrass a person. That's not a isser of malbim pnei chaveroi berabim. We don't want to hurt him, but we need to see to it that he provides for his children. And that is doicha the isser of halbonis ponim. One of my tshuvas I wrote, what's the heter to call a person to Beis Din for $50 and accuse him that he's not honest, that he didn't pay a loan, that he stole money? It's malbim pnei chaveroi berabim. There are 3 dayonim, a safra dedaina, Eidim. Many people are in Beis Din, and you're embarrassing a person. Albonis ponim for what? For $50? Yapalatzmer bekiv shenoish. And how? What's the heter to be malbim pnei chaveroi for money? Yoredei Kuf Nun Zayin steht. Orechaim Tov Reish Nun Vov. Ein Odom Chayv Lebazbez Hoin Rav Al HaMitzvahs. And a mitzvah says, hey, you don't need to be mebazbez a lot of money. But in Yoredei Kuf Nun Zayin steht, Shaloi Loi Varalav, you need to forfeit all your money. You need to lose all your money, not to be over on a lav, become vasei. So what's the heter of malbim pnei chaveroi berabim for $50? That is the importance of asiyas hatzedek v'hamishpat. It's not my interest to embarrass him. I don't want to humiliate him, but I want my money back. And asiyas hamishpat is so important. Is the asad of the world. Ishas riyayuchayim below. So in asiyas hatzedek v'hamishpat, there is no isar of malbim pnei chaveroi berabim. And all these rayas come back to the same shorish. The entire realm of Bein Odom Lachaveroi depends b'yasoid shel davar on hayashar v'hatoiv, not to do an avla and to bring the result. And when the kavona is a kavona toiva, and we mean good, and the result is good, there is no isra in Bein Odom Lachaveroi. The last source is a gewaltige Chiddush. Bava Basra Kuf Nun Dalet. So there's a story in the Gemara, person sold a field, and the seller passed away. The relatives of the seller argue he was a cotton and the kinyan is bottle. It's not valid. That field is ours. The purchaser says he was a gadol, and it's a valid kinyan. So the Gemara says, why don't we take the mace out of the kaver and we should be boidik the simonim, whether he has simona godless. The Gemara says, simonim asuyim lehishtanois. And the achroinim muchen sich mit the Gemara. What's the heter of nivol ha-mace? Take a mace out of his kaver, and we don't know how much time it's after the kvura. What's the heter? To solve a monetary dispute? What's the heter? Chuvas ksav soifos imekufa in dalat biyuredeya. Says a gewaldige doichik. And he says, well, the seller bears responsibility. Why does he bear responsibility? He sold the field. B'tomim v'b'yoisha. He did no avala. Can't understand what the ksav soifos says. The SHIUR Lemeshiv. Aleph, Reish Lamed Aleph, Madur Aleph, Chelak Aleph, Reish Lamed Aleph. SHIUR Lemeshiv says a gewaldige chiddush. Anything that's letzoirach, it's not an isser of nivel ha-mace. In halacha k'moised. SHIUR Lemeshiv says anything that is letzoirach, nivel ha-mace is only when it's for no reason. Anything that's letzoirach is not an isser of nivel ha-mace. Nobody holds that. According to the SHIUR Lemeshiv, if you want to build a house, you could uproot a basic kvoros and take the kvorum away. So what's pshat in the Gemara? And he is died. And what do you say as a chiddush? Kvoid ha-mace is ben odom l'chaveiro. It's not ben odom l'mokoim. Kvoid ha-mace is no different than kvoid ha-chai. Kvoid ha-mace is no different than kvoid ha-chai. And asiyas hadin v'hatzedek is doiche kvoid ha-chai. It's doiche kvoid ha-mace as well. Kvoid ha-mace is a ben odom l'chaveiro. It's not a ben odom l'mokoim. A mace is a person. And kvoid ha-mace is no different than kvoid ha-chai. Ukemoisha asiyas hatzedek v'mishpot bebeis din overrides kvoid ha-chai, it overrides kvoid ha-mace as well. Kachner ani ezdaite bebir sugis ha-gemora bava basla kuf nun dalet. So the yesoid is a yesoid gadol. In siman kuf zayin and choshe mishpot siv beis, there are more rights. And it's a makor of Mordechai and other Rishonim. If a person didn't pay loans, we could be ma'akav the kvura till his family comes up with money to pay his debt. What is the heter of kvoid ha-mace? So one explanation would be, it's l'toivus ha-mace. L'chvoidoi muter lahashhoisoi. And it's l'schusoi. It's midas adin if he didn't pay his loans. That's one mahalach. The other mahalach is kanal. Vasiyas ha-mishpot, vasiyas ha-tzedek is doiche kvoid ha-mace. So the first part of the shiur we spoke about Gineyvas Daas, proteo v'digdukeo, and then I shared with you a yesoid gadol and a fundamental yesoid achilek between the entire area of bein odom lamokoim, ein chochma ve'ein tvuna ve'ein eitza, and as pure as your intentions may be, it is only klolim asay doicha loitesa, and what you have in mind and what you want to do or the result is irrelevant. Lo chein, the entire chelek of Torah shebein odom l'chaveiro. So I'm leaving Lakewood tomorrow. Baruch Hashem, it was a big schus to share divrei Torah. V'shenezkeh tamid lahagel Torah u'la'adiram, and in the schus of Talmud Torah we should be zoicha b'kora b'yameinu tziyeh Yeshua Seilomim and be as goyel tzedek b'mheiro v'yomeinu.